Well, that's a nasty grinder. Oh, my bug repellent jacket for this. Whew. What do you mean are rocks still in my backpack? Yeah, they are. And the bug repellent. Oh, yeah. You know those suckers, they zap you right through the frickin' top of the hat. How ridiculous is that? Oh. Bit of a rainbow coming up. It's been showers on and off today. It's gonna be rain for a week solid coming up. Whatever. But I gotta keep these hikes going, otherwise I'm gonna kill myself when I jump out of that bush plane. So you see that slide back there? That's the north side of Mount Curry, and that is that slide that I hiked up, I don't know, last week or whatever. I told you guys about my horse passing. Well, that's where you're looking across to now, that slide. Of course, I see two slides there, I guess. So it's the last one on the left is the one that I hiked up in the rain that day, my rifle. Anyway, oh, man, that was a grinder. I doubled up on my weight. I still got more. I got a big water jug in the backpack and then all the camera gear that I normally bring. I don't know what I had in there today. It was enough. I got to keep doing these, otherwise I'm going to be in trouble. But anyway, I'm going to read a couple emails. They've been coming fast and furious as usual. And I keep forgetting. I want to share another experience that I remember when I was a little boy. And it's funny, I keep remembering it when I'm not here in the woods with the camera ready to rip. But I'll never forget this. Our family friends used to have a float plane and a small bush plane, and they used to fly it around all over the place and go to remote lakes and shit and go hunting and stuff. And remember, I didn't come from a hunting or fishing family. That was all my gig, right? And I don't know how, I'll never forget this. And there's another story that goes along with it. And I think I was in grade 4, maybe. Grade 5, maybe. But I was just a little guy, right? And I guess my dad and this guy that owned the plane, and his son, who was a couple years older than me, they're going to do the weekend thing in this remote lake, which was remote at the time with no roads going to it. And that lake was south of Port Alberni, southwest in the mountains, and it was Namint Lake. Okay? Lots of people from the island are going to be familiar with Namint Lake. Well, back then, so what are we talking? We're talking 1970, I don't know, this would have been in 1970 something. Probably 1970, I don't know, 3 or 4 or something. There's no roads in this lake. And I'll never forget it because, I wasn't bush experienced at all. I wouldn't even have known to be scared of anything in the forest at that young age, I don't believe. Okay, so we're talking a complete innocent mind, no clue about anything, with adults, and jumping out of this bush plane. And I think I still have a picture of the cabin. And if I do, I'll post it up on here. And I remember it was on the south side of the lake. 3/4 down the lake towards the head of the lake. So I'll be on the left side heading up the lake. And it's steep, mature fir forest going down to that lake. And the water was absolutely crystal clear. I'll never forget that. And they had there's a small cabin there. And a small aluminum boat there. They'd flown in a little outboard on it. And I guess they had found another abandoned cabin, which is on the north side of the lake and closer to the drain of the lake. And it was an A-frame, and an old tree had fallen through the roof. I remember that. And they were going down there and fixing up that cabin. Whenever they flew up there the odd time, right? But one thing that I do vividly remember, I remember them hanging out in the cabin. I'm the only one that was into fishing. And they had a tiny little, makeshift dock, just basically a couple logs with a little piece of cross plywood on or something. Just big enough to tie the float plane to, I think. And then that little aluminum boat. But I'll never forget it. I will never forget feeling terrified. I remember vividly feeling terrified, or like something was looking at me, because I had to go out of that cabin and just go down through the trees for about, I don't know, probably 10 yards till you hit the steep gravel bank, and I go in the little dock to go trout fishing. And I remember being terrified walking from the cabin door down that little dock, okay? Now, fast forward a few years, or even a handful of years, and then my mom's definitely not an outdoors person. And I guess one weekend, my dad and his friend flew up there again. They took my mom and his friend's wife. And they flew up there, and I'll never ever forget my mother telling me that when my dad and the other fella, they left the girls at that cabin, at the south side of the lake cabin. And they jumped in the aluminum boat and they went down the lake to the other side of the lake to go work on that A-frame. And I'll never forget what my mother said. She told me word for word that her and the other lady were absolutely terrified because something huge, this is all she said, I'll never forget it. She said something huge went crashing, walking between the cabin and the steep bank at the back of the cabin, the mountainside of the cabin. And I remember it was just a narrow little channel going through the backside of the cabin facing the mountain. And she said something huge. She said it was huge and terrifying. Went walking through the forest right beside the cabin and kept on walking down the lake towards the direction where my dad and the other fellow went in the aluminum boat. And I'll never forget she said that. Oh, sunshine, bugger. But that's fairly interesting, right? Especially considering what I know now. And I always wonder, too, if, we're born with our sixth sense. I know that, obviously, we were born with our sixth sense. And I've always, maybe I'll have it confirmed one day, but I've always thought that I may possibly be more in tune with my sixth sense all my life. And if that was an indicator, I'll never stop wondering if that was my first indicator of myself, my gut instincts, my sixth sense was feeling that terror going from the cabin down to the dock. And of course I didn't want to say anything to my dad or the other guy's kid. I kind of forced myself to go down to that dock and cast off the dock for trout, but I'll never forget that. And that might be something interesting for somebody out there. Maybe if some of you guys, girls, are listening from the island and you hear me say the word Mint Lake, and maybe you possibly know of some stories from that around that area as well. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. Whatever. But there you go. But I'm gonna crack open an email here or two while I'm up here, and then I'll grind my way back down to the bottom again. And of course my battery wants to die. So busy, man. So busy. I can't wait to get caught up and get all my things done. I'll tell you what. All right. I don't even know what this is about, but we're getting in a minute, aren't we? Okay. Ready? Listen to this. Hi, Steve. Thanks for doing what you do. My story is not as interesting as most of the stories you have shared, but oh well, I'll be as brief as I can. In 1967, my dad and older brother took me to see the Patterson film. I was 7 years old, son of a logger in the Cascades of Oregon. We talked about Bigfoot off and on, no definite answer one way or another. I, however, was open to the idea. We camped, hunted, fished, rode motorcycles all over the Cascades. Throughout the years and in many of these adventures into the mountains, I've seen and heard unexplainable things. Knowing animals on sight and sound like you do and I do, we're comfortable and confident in the outdoors, so here we go. In about 1995-96, a friend and I were on the way back home from a hunting trip. It was late summer, just a few miles from town. There were some big commercial cornfields up against the wooded hills that quickly ran transition into the mountains. Corn was about 7 feet tall, maybe a little more. It was late evening as we drove down the road. Neither of us were talking about anything particular. Both of us experienced outdoorsmen. Up ahead, something grabbed our attention coming out of the corn. It was as tall as the corn. It was walking upright, all dark or black with lighter tones on its chest and face. It was looking down as it stepped out of the end of the corn row. As fast as this was happening, I pointed and without thinking said, "Bigfoot!" Just as I would have said buck if it was a deer, bull if it was an elk, or a bear, not. It looked surprised, straightened up, did an about face, then disappeared back into the cornfield. We drove on for several minutes, said nothing to each other. Then Ron looked at me and said, "What did we just see?" I replied, "I'm not sure, but I'm not going back up without a bigger gun." We went home mostly in silence and didn't go back. 2010. I was elk hunting in the high Cascades in Three Sisters Wilderness. My friend and I had split up that morning at daybreak. I'd worked my way up back into the mountains. I was making my way up a shallow draw. It was full of big timber, small trees, and some underbrush. It had rained some, so it was very quiet. There was good elk sign. I worked my way up the game trail to the top of a finger. As I neared the top, it opened up. So I stepped off the trail with my back to a 7-8-foot fir tree. As I stood there, I just felt odd. I blew it off, stayed there anyway. It was a great spot and I wasn't going to leave till I was ready. So I'd been there for about 10 minutes when from behind me came a deep guttural growl. It reverberated through my chest. I've never been afraid of anything, especially when I have my 338, 378 Weatherby with me. But I must say, every muscle in my body froze. What went through my mind was, what the F was that? Then, whatever that was, is right behind me. Wind is in my face, no scent, I was thinking, I need to move. I looked down at my safety. With all my might, I made my thumb move forward and push the safety off. My gun was across me, right hand on the grip and trigger. Forearm in the bend of my left arm. I knew I had to run. I knew I had to turn and face whatever was there. Turning my body was like turning in thick mud. I had to force myself, and my brain kept saying, "Turn, turn, turn, and be ready to defend yourself." Steve, I was ready to shoot as I turned, but as I came around, there was nothing there. I was expecting to see something big, but nothing. Since then, I've done tons of research, watched videos, and listened to your followers' stories. There are plenty of places to hide and watch me in that draw. I was looking for something big. It never occurred to me to look for something hiding. I stayed for a few more minutes, got my shit together, and moved on hunting. I've always believed the best way to get over fear of these things is to go through it, conquer it, and move on. Now I live in the mountains of Idaho, and I'm still more than ever enjoying the great outdoors. But now I'm more aware. I investigate and question things often. We have lots of wolves, black bears, cougars, and now grizzlies, so it keeps a person sharp. Feel free to share. You may need to edit, but please tell it like I said. I've tried to share my experiences with you the way they happen. I pride myself in details so a person can see, feel, and smell my experiences. Greg Walsh, retired guide, entrepreneur. Thanks for that, Craig. I appreciate that. I appreciate you sending in. I appreciate you sending in that story, and I know so literally thousands of other people here appreciate it too. And it's pretty peculiar, those growls and those warnings that a lot of people get when they're out here in the timber. I don't understand it myself. You know, there's a lot I don't understand. There's a lot all of us don't understand. Obviously, we don't have very many experiences to share here online from people that have possibly been attacked or worse from these things or things, right? Because those people aren't going to be around to share the story. You know what I mean? That's over on Can-Am Missing 411 Project channel, David Pilatus' channel. Those are people that do have bad encounters when they're out here in the middle of nowhere, and they don't come back from them. And until possibly somebody survives that experience and manages to get back to safety to share exactly what happened, or until somebody sees absolutely clearly with their eyes one of these people getting taken in the middle of nowhere by who or by what, I haven't a clue. David will have more of an idea than me, but until somebody does that, firsthand witnesses somebody getting snatched or worse, we're never going to quite know for 100% certain exactly what is harming people out here, you know? And that's a little frustrating, especially for myself or this man that wrote in his story, and many of us, you know, we all refuse to, well, there's many of us that refuse to quit our passions for the outdoors. I'm not quitting. If I gotta disappear, if that's how I'm gonna go, well, I guess that's the way it's gonna go. But I'm not gonna run and hide and stay at home. I'm just not gonna do it. But I'll go with my gut, and I'll avoid places that my gut tells me to avoid. But there sure is a pile of unknowns going on, and like I said a dozen times, it sure sucks that we are not being officially educated and informed about all this bullshit that's going on, and that is something. It's definitely something worthy of being upset about, but you're going to be banging on empty doors if you try to attempt to speak to the scientific community or the government, the ministry, the Fish and Wildlife branch in the States. That's just going to be like banging on an empty door. It's not going to do you any good. So kick them off to the side. You know, we are what we have. We all got each other here, and we're going to have to work with each other and share our knowledge with each other. We're going to have to come up with the answers for everything ourselves and share it amongst ourselves, right? That's what we're going to have to do. That's what we're doing. Like I said before, yes, I do know of people and have been in contact with some people who know a hell of a lot more when it comes to these things. They know a lot of truths about a lot of lies that have been delivered to all of you for years, and they also are in contact with various of these beings. Confusing enough, that's a fact. And these particular beings, like I said earlier, these particular beings that these people are in contact with, they do not want them wiped out and killed off. So they are not going to say shit to anybody publicly. Maybe they will meet up with me privately somewhere and just tell me some information to pass on to all of you. All we can do is keep our fingers crossed, right? And but until then, and that as well goes to speak of there's other information that a few other people that have been in contact with me want to pass off to me, and I have a feeling not much is going to happen in that department until this blow-ass virus bullshit is finally kicked aside and our borders open up again. And believe me, once the borders open up, I'm going to be doing a lot, and I'm going to be sharing a lot on this channel once that happens. But anyways, there you go. There's a couple more.